You know, when you use Divi 5, it's very easy to design standard, basic, boring designs, which have just your standard muted colors. So in this example, I want to take this a step further and show you how you can design some sections with some colors and also be creative with the backgrounds and so on. So as you can see here, I've managed to create this design. And if I hover over it, you'll notice that it has a hover state. Okay, so I'm going to show you step by step how to create this. And throughout this, I'm going to be using a design system because it just makes the whole process of designing our websites with Divi 5 super fast. And I highly recommend that you create your own design system as well. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let me show you how to create this. So over here, I'm going to get rid of what we've designed so far. So I'm going to go in and delete this. So the first thing we want to do is to go in and add a single column. Now, it's important that we start off with a single column because we're going to be adding our design side by side using Flexbox later on. So the first element I want to add in here is a group. And in this group, we are going to add a text module. In fact, we need two of these. Okay. And then after this first one here, I'm going to add a heading. So I'm going to go ahead and search for my heading module and select. And then finally, we are going to need a button. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to select that. So with this now, I just need to go in and remove some of this text here because it's a bit too much. I'm also going to do the same over here. The text is a bit too much. Okay, now it's time to use our design system to customize our texts and our spacing. So the first thing I'm going to do is to come over here to this text and I want to set this as an eyebrow. So with the text selected, I'm going to come over here to the top and choose K eyebrow. Now you can see, my changes are instant. If I select this, I'm going to come to my heading here, set this to heading 2. And by the way, once I set it like this, I don't need to go into the tablet view to change the size and so on. Everything is fluid and responsive. And this is how you need to be thinking about designing your websites as professionals. Now, again, if I go to the phone, you can see the size of the text here is changing based on the screen size. Over here, I want to make sure that this text here is a paragraph. So I'm going to come over here and choose body text, just like that. And finally, for my button here, I need my button here to be a secondary color. So I'm going to come over here and choose button secondary. Now, do you see how fast it is for me to go in and add my sizes using my design system? This is the recommended workflow. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to go in quickly and select my group settings. And I want to show you how to add your spacing. So with my group settings selected, I want to come over here to design. And then over here on the layout, I'm going to set this to 0. That takes away all the spacing between all my elements, which is very, very important when we design. Now, I'm going to add spacing here based on design principles. So I'm going to choose my heading. And then over here on the spacing, notice that we have all the sizes here. So I'm going to say margin top, medium. Okay. And then for the paragraph text here, I'm going to say margin top, because that's the spacing I need. This is going to be small, okay? And then over here, margin top, over the button here is also going to be small. Okay, next, I'm going to hover over here and make sure that my group is in focus. And I want to add another group. So I'm going to select this plus button, add a group, and in that group, I want to add an image. So what I've done here is I've got two groups now. Now, if you can't see this, I can come over here to my layers and we can see that we have this column, okay? And so the column is right here. And in that column, we have these two groups, okay? So with these two groups now, I want them side by side, but I don't want them just to be side by side for the sake of having them side by side. These two elements or these two groups need to be a grid, okay? So what I want to do now is to go into my row settings, elements, and choose the column because the column has the two groups, which you can see right here. And I want these groups side by side as a column, but I'm not using the default Divi 5 columns. I'm going to use auto grid. I'm going to come over here, auto grid. So now my design is side by side. And when I change the size here, it is going to adjust automatically, which is very, very important for me. So I'm going to select my image here and make sure that I add my placeholder image, which is going to be this one, upload image. Excellent. The next thing I'm going to do now is to make sure that this row abides by the design UI design principles, and this needs to be following a 12 grid system. So I'm going to choose my row, and then over here I'm going to set this to content row, and you'll see that it has increased in size. The next thing I want to do now is to center this content right here. So again, I'm going to go into my group settings, design, layouts, and then over here on this little button here, okay, I'm going to choose center. And now everything is all centered. Now comes the fun part. I need to go ahead and add my background color. So to do that, I'm going to come over here to the top. But before I do that, I want to talk about a course that teaches you how to design professionally using Divi 5. Now, this course, as you know, Divi has been built from the ground up. It has a lot of features. So sometimes it can take time to learn how to use Divi 5. So if you love Divi and you want to get up and running super fast, I have this Divi 5 Mastery 2. This is a course with over 1,275 students. This is a lot of people taking on this course. And this course has been designed from the ground up to have all the latest features. So when you take on this course, you're going to be one of the designers who are up there with knowing how to design websites with Divi 5. And I'm telling you, Divi 5 is really fun to work with, but it comes with a learning curve. This course cuts that learning curve and helps you design fast. Now, you may be asking, how much is this course? Well, this course is only $37. One-off payment, and that's it. I'm going to be occasionally adding all these new lessons, new modules, new tips on how to use Divi 5 at no extra cost. So make sure you purchase this $37. The link to that will be in the video description below. All right, so let's continue on with our design over here. So with our design now, I'm going to select my section settings here. It's very important. You're on the section settings. So the first thing we're going to do is to come over here to the section and make sure that we set it to extra large, because I want some padding around my design here. Okay. And I don't want any random sizes, right? So with that selected, the next thing I'm going to do is to come over here to content, and then we're going to go to background. So to get the gradient, we need to select the gradient over here. So I'm going to select it here like that. And then I'm going to click on this plus button. Now already you can see we have a gradient because we have two colors here. But of course, we can add the colors that we want. And in this case, I want to add colors from my color palette. So I'm going to start off with this, the first color here. And then my second color here is going to be my secondary color. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be my specific colors. You can use your own colors for this design. Next, I'm going to play around with the slider here until I'm happy with how the gradient looks. And I think I like it like that. 332 or 330 is fine. Now that I have the gradient in place, the next step is to come over here to my row settings. Now, I need padding around my row because that's very, very important. So to achieve that, I'm going to come over here to design, and then over here on spacing, if I click on my presets here, I'm going to go with padding all 2x large. Okay, so this is large padding. So I know you can't see much because we don't have a background to this design. Okay, so while we're here in the row, I'm going to go to content. And then we're going to add a solid color. So I'm going to come over here to this little icon, insert dynamic content, or you can also come over here to the colors, but I find it easier to come over here. So what we need here is black. So I'm going to select black. And then we're going to add some transparency to this. So over here, I'm going to drag the slider down until I'm keeping an eye on my design here. So I'm going to bring it down until I'm happy with where it is. So 36. Now, last time I used 40. I think 40 works, great, because we can see the gradient here blending into this, which is, I think, a really cool design. So with this now, our contrast between our text here and the background, is not great. So here's the quick thing that you can do, especially using the design system. You select the text, you come over here to design, and then over here on the text, you just say text light. That's all you need to do. You come over here to the heading, you go to the heading text, you say text light. You come over here to the eyebrow, you go to text, and then you say text light. Now, this saves you time because you have to go in here, choose colors. You don't need to do that with a design system. Now you can see that this looks clean and it is well designed. But we want to take this a little step further by adding a hover state. And this is where I'm going to come over here to the top. Click on this little icon. Now it's important that you know where to locate this. It's over here to the top. In fact, let me get rid of that so you can see it is right here. Okay, you click on this little icon and now we can choose hover. All right. So with hover selected, anything that I'm going to do now is going to affect the hover state. Okay. When someone hovers on it, it's going to take any change that I'm going to do right now. So with my row setting selected, I'm going to go ahead to the background one more time. So I'm going to come over here and I am going to choose black like I did before, but the transparency I'm going to add is a bit less. So I was at 40. So now if I bring this down, I want to bring it down just a little bit so that we have just a little bit of it showing. Okay. So I was at 40. So I'm going to go to 60 now. Okay. So now that I'm happy with that, it's very, very important that you come over here to the top and change this back to desktop. If you don't do that, it's going to be messed up. You're going to make a lot of mistakes because you're going to make changes for the hover state. I always forget going up there and changing it back. But anyway, you get that now. Now, as I'm looking at my design, I see that my button here is quite too close to my text. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that by coming over here to design and then spacing. Instead of small, I want to go in and set this to large. Okay, I think large is much better for my design. Now it's time to save. So with this saved now, let's go ahead and do a preview on front end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now this is our design. And if I hover over it, you can see there's a bit of interactive happening there. Isn't that cool? You can actually use this in so many scenarios. You can make this background a bit lighter if you want, a bit more subtle. But as you can see, we can design really cool things in Divi 5. So this is one of those quick examples that I want to show you that you can take your design skills to the next level, make your designs pop just by adding a bit of interactive feature here and also the colors. Okay, it looks really nice. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, this design system helps you design websites that are easy to maintain, websites that are super, super fast to design. And if your team uses the same design system, you'll realize that your agency is going to be producing these websites fast. And even if you're a freelancer, you don't have to go into each and every design with Divi 5 and add manual settings. Everything that you need in here has been added. In fact, we can even do one more thing with this design. I want to add some rounded corners. So I'm going to select my row settings here. And if I go to border, I can set my radius to medium. And then for my image here, I can go to border, set this to small, and everything is visual. Everything is visual. You don't have to go in and start playing around with sliders, because if you were going to do this manually, okay, you would have to come over here and then start playing with this and then seeing, which one works. No, that's not how you design. Okay. You want to make sure that you're using presets, and this is already done for you, and everything is going to be super consistent. So if I save this now, my design is complete, and you can save this to your design library and use this on other projects. Let me know what you think in the comments box below, and until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.